John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Let me bring him in and kind of get his thoughts on this. There was betting odds out today. 23% chance that Nick Foles is the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. So the percentages are saying he's not going to be here next year. We are looking around the league for a good fit. Now, I find it interesting, John, that the top 3 teams in the draft have a quarterback. Oakland is number 4. They've got Carr making a lot of money, but they seem to be a little disenchanted with him. Tampa Bay looks like they're going to bring in Bruce Arians. Is he going to want Winston? That's interesting. Then the Giants sit at number 6. It's not a great quarterback class. So does that mean that Nick Foles is put himself in position to make a lot of money in this free agent class from one of these quarterback-needy teams? Because you know and I know, and Eitan apparently doesn't agree, that somebody is going to be reckless spending money.
Wait a second. Stop. I did not say that, nor did I disagree with that. What I've said is that the teams you've mentioned so far, Jacksonville, New York, moving on from a dead cap hit of that extreme and then sign a guy who's expected to make anywhere from 18 to 24 million is economically unrealistic. It does not mean that Cincinnati won't overspend for Nick Foles. I was just shooting down a bunch of teams so far. I apologize, John.
Let's start with the Giants, John. The Giants a team?
Look at what you stepped into today, McMullen.
Yeah. Somebody's going to give Nick Foles a lot of money. You can talk about reckless. You can talk about guys being overpaid. It's the going rate for veteran quarterbacks in this league. So I look at it more as the cost of doing business. The issue is, how do you build the rest of the roster when you have a veteran quarterback? And that's the more difficult part, because I think everyone, and we see it all the time, everyone, if you win, it's all the quarterback. If you lose, it's all the quarterback. And it's far more than that.
All right, I'm going to give a specific example to kind of help pinpoint where this conversation
I think we got to start with the Giants, right?
No, hold on. You asked him the question, and he chose to go a different way with the answer, right? You're going to have your chance to –
I can talk about the Giants.
No, but hold on. Let me jump in, and we can talk all you want about the Giants, I promise. But Blake Bortles is a $16.5 million dead cap hit. The assumption is that Nick Foles, even, right, like you said, somebody's going to be reckless, so Cincinnati, who can afford to be reckless, might throw a bid out there, 18-night, drive it up. So are we talking about the Jaguars spending $35, $36 million just for Nick Foles and then hamstringing themselves anywhere else?
Well, I think people, and, Philadelphia is the perfect example of this, and Howie Roseman, because he's so good at manipulating the salary cap. Now, he's the top 10 in the league as far as being a salary cap guy. And obviously he's got some help with Jake Rosenberg as well. But people are always wringing their hands about the salary cap. If you use the Eagles as an example, are they ever, you'll hear it again this year because they're scheduled to be over the cap. And everyone's going to go, oh, they can't do this, they can't do this. And they restructure deals. They cut certain players they don't want. They manipulate the cap. They push things off or down the road. They kick the can down the road. And they do basically whatever they want. Teams have gotten smart enough under the current system, which has been here for a while, that, yes, if you're in a situation with Blake Bortles, Brock Osweiler was an example in Houston when they made a mistake there and were able to essentially trade the contract for a draft choice. You can figure out a way how to move on. So, people.
Yeah, but that's assuming you can bring him in. Like, I don't doubt or disagree with what you're saying about moving on from the contract, John. I'm just saying there is a smaller window than Mike makes it seem that teams can manipulate and maneuver and still have money to build a team around a 30-year-old quarterback.
What I'm saying is, if you want the player, and if somebody wants Nick Foles, they identify they want Nick Foles, whether it's through a sign and trade. The Eagles, by the way, that's another conversation. The Eagles aren't letting them get to free agency. They want something back.
Well, yes.
So whether that's, they have to talk him into the mutual option, if he ends up paying the $2 million back and gets out of that option, Eagles might franchise him to do a sign and trade. So it's going to have to be a situation where not only do you have to pay for Nick Foles, you also have to give up assets for Nick Foles. So for him specifically, it's more complicated than most. And, oh, by the way, if he keeps winning, he's in the conversation here. I know people don't believe that now, but if he goes to the NFC Championship game, and I had this discussion with Jeff Mosher last week, if they lose this week, I don't think it's an issue. Obviously, if they lost this week. But if they get to the NFC Championship game, then it starts to become an issue. And if they get to the Super Bowl,
is it an issue?
Super Bowl.
Is it an issue because the front office would be torn, or because the locker room would start becoming torn?
Both. The locker room would be torn. The front office would be torn. There would be numerous people in that organization that say, we can't move on from a guy who took us to the Super Bowl 2 consecutive years. Right. Can't do it. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see. Stranger things have happened. They keep winning. As of right now, as I said, if they lose this game, it's definitely not an issue. But if they happen to win this game, then all of a sudden he's in a conversation with the Eagles, and you don't have to worry about the Giants or the Bengals or the Buccaneers or anybody else.
John, how valid do you think that conversation is if they lose in the NFC Championship game? Because I remember you and I had this conversation right when Mike was out, or maybe it was on the national show that I do, where it was pretty much nil, and I think it was more based on the Eagles doing something, making a run. But I think that my opinion would be that there's a fine line, and that fine line is you make it to the Super Bowl, we're all going to sit down and talk about how we can make this thing work with Nick Foles. You don't make it to the Super Bowl, Carson Wentz, Nick Foles is gone.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think he does have to make it back to the Super Bowl. The only caveat I would sort of put on that is if, say, they lose to the Rams 37-34 and Foles throws for 4 touchdowns and he's phenomenal and the defense loses it for him, I think maybe that shifts it a little bit. But otherwise, if it's, say, a 21-7 game and they lose to Dallas and he plays poorly, yeah, it's not even a conversation. So I think it depends.
Say this, John, though. What if, the game that he just played, now he made the game-winning drive, yada, yada, but he made 2 terrible throws. They didn't score a whole heck of a lot of points. It's not like they scored 30 points and won that game. They scored 16 points. It wasn't an offensive masterpiece here. So what if that's the way they keep winning?
Yeah, I mean, well, again, if that's the way they keep winning, if they win the Super Bowl, I still think, yeah, it's an issue. I think the Eagles aren't going to move on from Nick Foles. If that's the way they keep playing and they bow out in the NFC Championship game even, I think they move on from Nick Foles, and it's full speed ahead for Carson Wentz. So I think it all depends on how he plays. And when you look at that Bears game, you're right. There was too many points left on the field. He made certainly the one really, really bad mistake. But also understand that's probably, although they were ranked 3rd, it was the top scoring defense. And from a talent perspective, that's probably the best defense in the NFL.
John McMullen at JF McMullen on Twitter, joining us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. You know, a lot of people, we were debating it back and forth, very torn on Foles and moving forward here. And obviously, you know, that's going to be a big topic of conversation. It was reported before the game that there's going to be an active trade market, that the market's going to be active and real for Foles. Do you think the Eagles would put both guys on the market and entertain the best? If they said, oh, my God, look at this offer we got for Wentz, like, has it gotten to the point where they would consider offers for both guys?
I don't think it's gotten to that point with Carson Wentz. I think at this point it's still the position from the Eagles that there's no way they want to move on from Carson Wentz. Okay. So I think it all harkens back to how does this season end and how does Nick play the rest of the way? And are they able to keep this run going? I think the only way Nick Foles puts himself to be in a position to be the starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles is to keep winning. And the question is, obviously, if you win the Super Bowl, I think he is a starting quarterback. I don't see any scenario that you can move on for a team that hasn't won a championship since 1960 to move on from a guy who wins you 2 consecutive Lombardi trophies.
Well, now you're really betting that he's going to win you a 3rd and a 4th and a 5th. You know what I mean? Like at what point do you just say?
By the way, I don't agree with that.
Right.
I still think
at what point do you almost say? At what point do you just say this guy won us 2? The chances of him winning us a 3rd are so remote. Let's go. Let's get rid of him and bring the other guy in to see if because we could win with a different guy maybe.
Well, I think logically you're right. And I think from a skill set standpoint, Carson remains the much higher ceiling down the road. But we talk about the emotion of it. You guys see it all the time with phone calls and text messages. It's really, really difficult. You mentioned the Giants. We'll finally get to the Giants. They can't move on from a guy who can't play because he won 2 Super Bowls years ago. And you're going to move on from a guy who won 2 in back-to-back seasons currently? It's impossible. They can't do it.
I find this to be so intriguing because of the way the draft is set up and the way that the draft is weak this year at quarterback, but the teams at the front drafted quarterbacks last year. The Giants are at 6, conceivably can get the quarterback that everybody mocked them for not taking. They could get him this year at 6, right?
Well, they can get a quarterback. It's a question of what quarterback. I mean, Justin Herbert going back to school hurts. You got the kid from Ohio State.
Right, Haskins
the kid from Missouri. Yeah, I mean, they were in a better position. This was a better quarterback year. They certainly could have gotten.
Yeah, but they might luck out. I mean, they get the running back who's great, and then at 6, they didn't have a bad enough year to get another guy. But
that's the interesting thing. There's already people they don't want a quarterback because they think if they put together the great running back with the great receiver and they get 5 all-pro offensive linemen, they're going to win another Super Bowl with Eli Manning. And they're not. They made a mistake. I don't care how good Saquon Barkley is. And I'm not criticizing Saquon Barkley as a player because he's a great player. But the value of the position is so lopsided. And the Eagles talked about it, and they made the right decision. When you're in a position to get the quarterback, you go get the quarterback because you don't want to be in that position again. This is not the NBA. This is not multi-year tanking strategies. That's not how you do it in the NFL. And the Giants have been a terrible organization for a number of years, and that has only helped a team like the Eagles.
Giants, Jacksonville, Denver. I think Cincinnati might be ready to move on from Dalton. Miami's going to move on from Tannehill. Washington's got a quarterback conundrum with money and that situation down there. I would think that's about it when it comes to the quarterbacks. I'm looking at the draft order here. So I think it's going to be a very intriguing offseason to see what these teams do lining up here. Real quick, John, Cliff Kingsbury looks like he's going to be the new head coach in Arizona. Is this just find a hipster and stick him on the sideline?
Yeah, he's got a beard like Sean McVay, and he's got hair like Sean McVay.
He wears Ray-Ban pointed sunglasses. That's why, right?
Does he get to bring Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid to the Cardinals? Because if not, it's not going to work. I mean, this is a guy, I think he had 2 winning seasons at Texas Tech. And I think he had 3 consecutive losing seasons.
Yeah, when he just got fired at Texas Tech, for God's sake.
Yeah, I think 44 days ago he got fired after having 3
He's had 4 jobs since he got fired.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. This league, and I tweeted about it, and people call it innovative. It's laughable to me. Innovative is not groupthink, and everybody wants Sean McVay, and everybody wants the young offensive mind, Matt Nagy, that type. Looks like Cleveland's going to go with Freddie Kitchens or Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Stefanski, Ed Stefanski's kid, might be the next coach of the Cleveland Browns. This league,
he called plays for 4 minutes.
If I were Vic Fangio or Jim Schwartz, I would just say, you know what, I'm out, because this league and these organizations looking for coaches. I mean, generally there's a reason they're looking for coaches, because they're bad organizations, and they have no idea what to do. So they look for a guy with 3 week stubble and hope he's Sean McVay. I mean, it's absurd.
I saw that you said that you talked to McVay once or twice. Does that make you a candidate?
Well, that's the joke. Anybody who's had any contact with Sean McVay. Yeah. Matt LaFleur with the Green Bay Packers. I mean, Mike Mularkey got fired in Tennessee for taking that god-awful quarterback to the playoffs because he's not innovative enough. And Matt LaFleur goes in there as the offensive coordinator. They're worse by every measure. They don't make the playoffs. He does nothing with Marcus Mariota. And all of a sudden, he's going to be the savior for the Green Bay Packers. Even the Packers are making bad decisions.
Well, Broncos are down to Vic Fangio or Mike Munchak, so they're going to go with 2 grizzled guys. One of the two, right?
Well, yeah, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. I'm not saying that you should hire a grizzled, experienced guy either, but I just don't like the way they go about the process.
Yeah.
And it's just copying the one guy who had success, and that's not how you do it. I talk about this league all the time, and I talk about Doug Peterson's success, and I get to see it up close. And it's not about X's and O's. It's about leadership. It's about managing the personalities. Now, you do have to be good at the X's and O's, but that's the easy part. I would say we can all pay $100 and get Game Pass and look at every game and see the best plays from every team and steal them. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Matt,
the hard part is managing the personality.
Matt Rule looks like he could be the new Jets coach. Is that a McVay type hire or a smart? Because a lot of people are saying that.
Well, the Jets wanted Kingsbury as well, so they lost. And can you imagine 2 teams wanted Cliff Kingsbury, so they lost there.
He has good product in his hair. Good product in his hair.
Adam Gase might get another chance there, or they could reboot. But you're right, Matt Rule, which is interesting because he's a former Temple guy.
No Josh McDaniels. He says he's staying with the Pats.
Yeah, well, that's one of those things where the only organization that was really interested was Green Bay, and they went in a different direction. So that's one of those. No one's interested, so I'm going to announce I'm coming back. Well, where else were you going to go?
Yeah. All right, good conversation. Plenty more this week. Anything that Schwartz and Groh never says anything interesting, although he said he couldn't figure out how to use Tate. That was fun.
Jim Schwartz gave the rare, Jim doesn't like to give out too many accolades, but he said Crevan LeBlanc basically saved the Eagles' season. So that was a little
that
surprise.
Play?
Well, no, just his play
just
overall.
In general. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And which is pretty amazing because they picked him up obviously off waivers from the Lions. Was a former Bears player, and he came back to haunt his old team. And he's got. I think he's got a future with this team as the nickelback moving forward next year because.
Did you know?
It's pretty likely,
I don't know that I told you this last week. That the game that the Eagles played the Bears last year, that Crevan LeBlanc was the leading tackler for the Bears.
Yes, I did know that.
Crazy.
That was a 31-3 game, so obviously it wasn't that great for the Bears. But, yeah, I mean, That's obviously, I just mentioned, probably the most talented defense in the NFL, but their nickelback was hurt. And they probably could have used Gravon LeBlanc. So they're probably kicking themselves a little bit that they cut him back in the summer.
By the way, real quick, these are the favorites according to BetDSI on the coaches. Freddie Kitchens in Cleveland, Cliff Kingsbury, Arizona, Mike McCarthy with the Jets, Cincinnati, Darian Simmons. I've never even heard of him. He's the
Mike Brown doesn't want to. He's a special teams coach, I think. Mike Brown doesn't want to spend money, so that's what that's about.
Yeah, their leaders are Darian Simmons, Todd Monken, he's the offensive coordinator in Tampa, Hugh Jackson, Vance Joseph, Zach Taylor, who has a beard.
Zach Taylor is Press Taylor's brother.
Right. He is the quarterback coach for Sean McVay. Yes.
So I'm surprised he doesn't have a job yet, to be honest.
Denver's –
because he does have a beard.
Denver's is Vic Fangio. Miami is John Harbaugh. They are the leaders in the clubhouse for these according to these betting sites. Now, there's a couple other interesting names underneath of all these guys, but Jim Caldwell, like if your team ended up with Jim Caldwell, are you happy with that or are you like dismayed?
It depends. I mean, if you're asking me whether I'd rather have Jim Caldwell or Cliff Kingsbury, I'm going Caldwell all day, every day.
That's hilarious.
If you're telling me there's an option for a better name, maybe I'm not happy with the, people use that term retread all the time. And sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not true. Jim Caldwell took two different teams to the playoffs.
Nick Saban is on the Cleveland list, plus 800.
Yeah, well, that's probably not going to happen. But
after last night, he wants out.
It's interesting. By the way, is everybody saying Alabama shouldn't be in the college football playoff because they got blown out?
They had a bad night.
Have you gotten any of those calls yet?
They had a bad night. But Notre Dame
is out.
Have a bad Notre Dame is out.
Well, that's what I was kind of talking about.
I know. I was one of those
Julian
people.
Love.
I was one of those people
Julian
Notre
Love
Dame did not deserve
hurt.
in.
Julian Love got hurt early in that game.
They stink.
And that's when things kind of derailed.
All right.
But that's what I'm saying. People act like they know about teams, two lost teams, and Georgia loses to Texas.
Well, they don't want to be there. They don't want to be there.
Come on. You're probably right, but still. And Chris Long, by the way, real quick, because I know we got to go. Great troll. He said, for all those SEC people, he said, hey, you can't get used to the ACC speed until you see it up close.
By the way, West Virginia beat Cliff Kingsbury twice. That's why he's fired.
He lost a lot of games, not just West Virginia.
See you later.
All right, man.
He appeared to be the Boardwalk on the hotline.